Hello everyone, it is Evan from the Trade Risk on Sunday, November 8th, here with some trade ideas heading into next week. And before we get into those trading ideas, I am going to briefly touch on my thoughts on the market, where we are. I just did a video on this Thursday, so not a whole lot has changed, but we're going to briefly go over sort of the market environment as a whole. And before we jump into that, I also want to remind everyone that I am holding a webinar this Tuesday. It's at 5 p.m. Head to thetraderisk.com/webinar. It's going to be about an hour long. I'm going to go over a few different topics, some different things that I look at, how I trade, how I use profit targets and R multiples, how I analyze price action, how I position size. It's free, so just head here, thetraderisk.com/webinar. Drop your email. If you can't make the date, I'll send you a recording of what you missed. So I hope to see some of you guys here on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Now, with that said, let's jump into the current market environment. And you could see here, we finally did, let's take a look at a weekly chart. We had a 1% gain, so we still managed to grind out a 6th straight green week here. And you can notice that last week we had a bit of a topping tail here. This week we did too. So we're starting to slow down just a little bit, but we are still making forward progress. Now, if we go back to a daily chart, you can see we've been riding this 8-period exponential moving average higher for the past month, and we still have not yet closed below it. Now, these were one of basically two things I've been telling members to look out for here over this past week or two. Is let's see until we get a close below the 8-period exponential moving average or a close below the previous day's lows. Let's take out all of the prior day's action. One of those two things would be the first sort of interesting day to take notice that maybe this trend is starting to weaken and turn a bit, and we want to get a little more defensive. And you can see that we really haven't gotten either of those scenarios to play out for us. Even on this daily chart, you can see between Friday, Thursday, and to a lesser extent Wednesday, see, even with the weakness creeping in, the buyers did step in and drive us off the lows on basically all of these days, particularly Friday and Thursday. So you can see there's still a bid here. There are still eager buyers here trying to get in even at the slightest weakness, and I still think that's constructive. Now again, we could come in Monday and gap down, and you know, all of that is out the window. So of course this can all change sort of on a dime, but given where we are and we can only analyze what's happened, we are still very strong here. We're still holding pent up, and buyers are still aggressively stepping in. So again, I'm going to keep that same sort of line of thought until we can really start to either A, close below this 8 period, or really start to get a close below 209 and start to, you know, pull back a little bit further. I still think this is a market you want to have some exposure to, and that's sort of the way we've been playing it. We've been rotating in and out of names and trying to just catch on to outperforming names and stocks that are breaking out in some of the more favorable sectors. So that's sort of the bigger picture thoughts. Again, I still do believe, there is a bit of a magnet pull up here to retest these old highs right around 212. Doesn't mean we have to get it. And again, it'll be interesting to see how we come in on Monday and see if we can continue for a 7th straight week higher, or are we finally going to get our first weekly close that doesn't gain traction and build on the prior weeks. Now, if we look at some other markets, and this is particularly why I'm so bullish again, is the small caps are starting to come alive here. Look at the close on Friday here. It closed at the weekly highs. It took out the prior 3-day highs, and this is looking strong. It looks like we're coming back up to retest perhaps this 120 level that played as support prior to the earlier in the year. And everything looks pretty constructive here. So, with this group of stocks starting to rally and perk up, I think that does bode very well for our markets overall. And again, the Qs, tough to be too pessimistic about this, about the NASDAQ either, given it's at 52-week highs and it's trying to build on them and take out and make new highs. So all this considered, again, I think we are still very much a glass half full mentality. And with that said, here are some long ideas heading into next week. Now I got 5 ideas we're going to go over. I'm saving my favorite one for my newsletter going out this Sunday. So again, if you want to get on that free market newsletter that I do, try and put some unique content in there, my favorite trade idea, do sign up. Head to the Trade Risk, I think the top right, this link here, you can use that, sign up for the newsletter. And again, the webinar we're hosting on Tuesday, if that does interest you, if you want some more info, if you like these videos, check out each of those. Now let's get into some trade ideas. The first is EWZ. So this is actually a Brazil index here, and it is starting to look pretty favorable here. It's been carving out, I guess some would look at this as an inverted head and shoulders pattern, whatever you want to call it. It's been basing out nicely. It's been in an extended downtrend, but it is starting to tighten up and show some signs here of bottoming. So what I like is this this index here above $25, $24.80 more exact, and if it can start to rally above there, it looks like we could start to leg higher here. I like that there's not a whole lot of overhead supply in here. It's been in a pretty steep downtrend, so I like the potential in EWZ. Now next up is BRCM. This one's a little sloppy for me, but I think you could, depending on your trade style, you might be able to still make some plays on this. If you look at a weekly chart, I think this does paint the picture a little nicer here. We got our highest close now dating back to June, July of this year. So we are starting to perk up here. We've been basing out nicely, consolidating this huge expansion bar up here back in May, and this one looks like it's trying to get going again. So do check the earnings on this. I'm not sure when it does report, but this one is something that's pretty interesting. Maybe you wait for it to base out a little bit here and take a second entry, but it does look like it's on the move. BRCM. Next is HLF. This is Herbalife, and this one did have a pretty strong down day on Friday, closing down 4%, but it didn't really change the technical picture here. We're still range bound, so clearly this one does need a little more time. If you look on a weekly chart, ever since bottoming down around $30, we've been grinding higher, and more recently we've been carving out this sideways range here. So I think if we can start to get some closes above $58, I think this one would be an interesting breakout candidate for higher, and some of you guys might even like the rollover here. If this does start to break below $53, I think you might be able to even catch a breakdown trade in this. So essentially we're just looking at some tight price action that could break out in either direction. So that's an interesting one for both the long and short side. CDK, I believe I've talked about this one recently as well. It's getting really tight in here for this is a pretty recent IPO name, and this is something that usually does have some good movement in it, and you can see it's been getting real tight, basically right around this $50 level. Every time it gets above it or below it, we start to get that mean reversion right back to it. So there's a strong magnet at $50, and sooner or later that's going to resolve itself, and that's what I'm waiting for. I'd like to see a breakout getting into this $52 level. If you can start to leg higher, again, it's come from the lower left and been trending to the lower right, to the upper right, I'm sorry. So it's been a nice uptrend. I'd like to see that trend continue. So I'd like to play that breakout above $52. So I'll be keeping that on watch over the next couple of weeks. Again, you want to check earnings on this one. And then finally, KR, Kroger Company here. This one, maybe a little bit of a slower play, but it's had a really nice move, especially late 2014. We had this pretty epic run up here, this trend higher, and then it's been consolidating ever since. So if we look at a weekly chart, I think this shows the picture too a little bit better. But you've been basing out here. We've had some strong resistance right around $38. We had this violent move here. This was on kind of the apocalyptic day a few weeks ago, where a lot of charts look like this, but ever since then it's been kind of coming back here and banging its head against this $38 level. So not quite ready yet, a slightly longer term view here, but something that is pretty interesting here on the longer term setups, in my opinion. So that's what I have today. Again, I have one more. I got my favorite setup. It's going out in the newsletter later today, so sign up for that at thetraders.com and check out that webinar if that's something that interests you. So I hope these ideas help. And as always, thank you for watching. I will catch you next time.